Alright, so welcome back again. My name is Jesse, and in this wonderful and exciting tutorial, I'm trying to see how to set up a simple Kubernetes cluster using Talos Linux, which is a Kubernetes operating system on Proxmox. So let's see what we'll be doing. So by the end of this tutorial, we'll be trying to see how to set up a very simple cluster, which we have one control plane, right, on a specific IP address. You can set a static IP if you want, or you can just allow the installation from Proxmox to generate a dynamic IP, and then you set up a worker node, so you can have multiple worker node using Talos OS. And then we also have a Talosctl and Kubectl on our workspace that is going to have all the configurations so that we can talk from the CLI, the Talosctl, to our cluster, right, to our Kubernetes node to make our deployment. So that's the main idea. So what is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is an orchestration and container management platform, right? So let's see how it works. So I'll go back again to our workspace here, and then we need first the ISO image to download, right? Because it's a Linux operating system. So I'll go back again to my GitHub here. So inside, if you go to talos.dev, you can go to the GitHub, the releases. If I check the releases, so the Sidero Labs Talos releases, you can have all the various ISO image here. So this is one of the images. So I can right click on this, copy link, and then I'll go to my Proxmox. So if I go to my Proxmox, I'll go to my local storage, then my ISO images, then I can go download from URL, and I can paste in my URL and give it a name, right? I already have it installed, which is here, so I don't need to install it, right, to download it. So let's see how to create a VM from this Talos Linux Meta ISO. So I'll go to create VM, then I'll give it a particular name so I can keep it as this, and I'll call it as my Talos master node, right? And I'll go with the OS to the OS section. I'll go to my local storage where my ISO is stored, then I'll pick the Talos Linux ISO image I downloaded. Then I'll move on to, you keep the guest OS because it's Linux, so this is correct. I'll move on to the next step, which is the system. Inside the system, I'll keep it as it is, but in case you want to use the QEMU agent, you can also check it out. Then we go for the dist. Inside the dist, if I go to my Talos configuration into the documentation, there is a system requirement here that gives us the minimum requirement and the recommended requirement. So for a control plane, we are going to set it as just 2 GB of RAM, 2 cores, and then 10 GB of hard disk space. So I'll come back here and change this one from 30 to 10. Then I'll move on to my CPU. The CPU is 2 GB for the control plane. Then the memory, I'll keep it as 2 GB again. The network will still be part of the normal bridge from Proxmox, the virtual machine bridge 0, which is the one that was automatically assigned when we were setting up Proxmox. I'll go to the confirmation and everything is okay. I can click on finish. So whilst this is doing, this is going to create my first control plane here, right, which is going to be the one that is going to be used to manage all the different worker nodes. So once it's done, I can click on this one here, and then I can start it, right? So you can start it here. So start, then it's going to start my installation. So this will show the Talos ISO, automatically boot into the maintenance mode, and then it's going to run, install, and assign a dynamic IP address for us, right? Perfect. So it's going to run it, doing some health checks. Perfect. See that now it's installing. It's going to assign an IP address. So the IP address it's assigned was 22, right? So that is the IP address that was assigned dynamically. So I'll call it as my 22. You can make it static if you want. Then, since we have an IP address, we need a way to communicate with this Talos, right? This control node. So first, you have to go to your your workspace, right? Then you need to install the Talos CLI. So I just go to the documentation, go to my Talosctl, which is going to be used to interact with our cluster, just like Kubectl. If you go here, we have installation instructions for Windows, Linux, and then the rest. So I am on Windows, but I'm using WSL, so I'll use this approach here. So I'll copy this one, go to my location here, and then I'll install it. So I already have installed it, and then you can see the version that I'm working on. I can also do my Talosctl -help to see the information, right? Perfect. So now I have it on my WSL. The next thing is that we need to make some configurations. So we need to do some configurations so that we can talk to our cluster. So the first thing is that let's generate them. It's going to be my Talosctl. So let's make a directory. I'm going to call that Proxmox cluster config. I'll call it as this. I'm moving to my Proxmox cluster config. Then I'll just call it as my, let's keep it like this. I'll call it as my Talosctl gen config. Then I'll specify the name of my cluster. So let's go to Proxmox K8 cluster. This is the name of the cluster I'm giving. Then I'll specify the IP. So the IP that we need is the ControlPlane IP, which is 22, which is the same IP we got from here, right? This particular IP, that's what we are trying to use. So I'll go back here. Then I'll set it as 192. Don't forget to make the HTTP. Then 192.168.0.22. Then don't forget the port, which is also important, otherwise it will not know. The port is 6443, right? The normal default Kubernetes port. Then I'll specify the output directory. So output directory or -o. Then I'll specify my output directory. I'll put that as config. So this is going to generate the ControlPlane YAML manifest, the worker YAML, and then a Talos config. So I can open it with VS Code. So you see the content. So in case you want to change the IP right for any of these things, yes, I trust this. I will now go here. In case I want to change the IP, I'll just go into my cluster config, into my ControlPlane. It is very, very detailed with a lot of instructions and comment. So in case I want to change to my second IP, this is one of the ways, right? You just specify it here. The same for the worker node, right? And then inside my Talos config, we have the CA for the certificate. These ones are for the certificate, right? Perfect. So let's close this one, and then I'll come back here. So we already have created our configurations. The next is to configure and then create our control plane. We need to create this one, right? We need to create the configuration and apply the configuration for that. So Talosctl, then I'm just going to go with my apply config. Then I'll specify the node, so nodes that I want. So the node is going to be the IP address of my control node, 168.0.22. That's the IP that was assigned, the one that is here. Then I need to specify the location of the file, so file cluster, the control plane, which is referring to this one. Then I can go with insecure, right? So this is going to be the first one. Then I'll repeat the same. Talosctl apply config nodes. Then this is going to be the first one is for the control plane. We need to also do the same thing for the worker node, but we don't have a worker node yet. So before we create and apply the configuration for that, we need to set it up. So I'll go back again to my Proxmox. Here we have the Proxmox for the control node here. We need to set up one for the worker node. So I'll go down here, create my VM. I'll keep it as one. I'll call it as my Talos worker node 1. Right, we can set up multiple, repeat the same instructions as we did previously. I'll give it as the same thing, this, I'll keep it as 10 per the recommendation. I'll move on to the CPU, I'll keep it as 1, it's okay. Memory, let's keep the memory as 1. Network, same. Then confirm, then finish. So now we have one master node, and then the next one is going to be my worker node, right? Perfect. So this is the worker node. So you can also set another worker node so that you can have 3 worker nodes. So let's create another one in case you want. So you can create a 3rd worker node if you want. So let's call it as Talos worker node 2, right? Then follow the same instructions. Then we go to the next system. This, we keep it as 10. Keep the CPU as 1, memory as 1 gig, network the same, and then we can now go to my next, confirm, finish. So now we have 2 worker nodes. So we have the master node, worker node 1, worker node 2, right? Perfect. So let's start with the worker node 1. So I'll click on this one. So whilst I click on it, I start. Also going to set it up, follow through the normal steps, and then it's going to generate a dynamic IP, right, which we want to use for our cluster. So now we have 2. So this is for the worker node, and then this is for the master node or the control plane, right? So it's connecting. It has given us an IP address 77. So the worker node here is 77. We can do it for the other one if you want, but let's continue with this. Now, since we have 77, I'll go back again here. Then I'll set 192.168.0.77. Same thing, file cluster config, then my worker node. It's saying something that yeah, we forgot the secure, right? So that's why. So Talosctl apply config, then dash nodes, the IP address 192.168.0.77, file cluster config worker insecure, right? So that it works. Perfect. Now we are done with that. We have set up our control node, and then our master node. Yeah, our master node, right? A control node, and then a worker node. Now we need to export our configuration. So export Talos config, which is going to be my configuration. So cluster config, then my Talos, right, config. Then I can now go with my Talosctl config. We need to configure the IP address, the endpoint that it will listen to. We can do -e or endpoint. Then I'll specify my IP for the control node, 168.0.22, right? Then I'll do the same thing. Configure the node that is supposed to listen on, 192.168.0.22. Perfect. Now if I go with Talosctl bootstrap, it's going to set up my etcd, right, etcd, to keep a registry of some small mini database to keep track of everything. Then we have my Talos. If I can do my Talosctl dmessage to see if everything is working on well. So now it's give us some information. The etcd has finished setting up, but there was some, so new port was rendered, and there were some issues with configuration, right? Then the next thing is I can just go with my Talosctl, then kubeconfig dot. Then I can now run anything I want to do, right? So I can just do, if I have kubectl already, I can use kubectl get nodes. But now it's still failing because there is a problem with my configuration. I have issues with Docker and the rest. So we're having this error, right, when we're trying to set up. So let's see how to fix this error. So the simplest way is that we have to specify and let Talos generate a configuration file and then point it to the right IP address. So the simplest way is this. One of the simple way is that I'll just go back again to my Talos configuration, right, that I have, and then I'll need to tell it to give me a specific IP address, right, or specify my node. So it's going to be here, so my Talosctl. So if I check here, so that we have my kubeconfig, right, configuration here, but I'm just going to go with my, and then if I go with here, let's see what is inside the config file for the Kubernetes. Inside my kubeconfig file, we have this cluster IP address. That's what was set, but somehow it's not able to use the right IP, right? So this is what we set. So somehow it's not able to use this one. So I can do this. I can go back again to the workspace here. We had it here, right? So this was generated. So one of the ways I can just export my kubeconfig. Then I'll specify the location of it, which is inside my current directory, and it was kube. I think it's kube, right? Let's go with backslash. This one, right? Then I can now run it again. So this perfect is going to use that one that I have, right? Then I can just do my Talosctl-n. Let's use the IP that we had, which is 192.68.0.22. Let's do health to see if there's some information. So it's telling, okay, discovered. It was able to discover the IP address, waiting for ECC to be healthy, waiting for it to be healthy, right? And then we're able to get some information about it. We can also try the same thing we did, which is Talosctl-n, then IP address 192.168.0.22, get members, get all the members, and now you can say we have the two members, right? We have the control plane and then the worker node also there, and then we can just see if we can get it from kubectl cluster info. Let's see if you be able to get it. Perfect. So you can see that now it's running. So we're able to get that control plane is running on this particular IP address. The core DNS is running on this particular namespace. And then we can also get more information about any problem that we're having. I can now do my kubectl get nodes. Now perfect, it's working, right? So we see that we have our control node working and the master node working. So what you had to do and what we forgot was that we forgot to set up the configuration. The configuration was generated, which was this one here, right? But we did not export it. So we had to export that configuration that we had. So we had this error, then we needed to export that configuration so that we'd be able to work on it, right? So that's the main idea. So thank you for watching this tutorial. You have seen how it works and everything is working. We can make any deployment. So I can just do my kubectl get. We have get nodes. We can, in case we have deployment, we can just do deployment. But we don't have any deployment, so it's not. We can create a namespace here. We can just create a namespace. Then we can just give it a name like, let's say, Proxmox local, right? Something like that. Now it's going to create a namespace, and then I can just do kubectl get namespaces. Then we have all the namespaces that we have there. We have the one for Proxmox local, which we set. Then we can now build containers from there. So kubectl can just do get deployment -n. The namespace is Proxmox local, right? And then there's no deployment, right? So that is how to set up a simple cluster on Kubernetes with Talos. A simple Kubernetes cluster with Talos, right? Very simple, very cool. Of course, there are a lot of things you can do, right? So there are so many stuff you can do with Talos, which is quite cool, right? So you can do a lot of things. You can check for posts that are running. You can also use the Talos command together with these commands, and it's going to work. So you can use Talos logs alongside your Kubernetes logs. So you can do my Talosctl. I can specify that I want, if there are containers -k, then this is going to list all the different containers that are running. So these are the individual containers for the different namespace together with all the different images, right? They are running, so you can see all of them. This is from Talos, and then you can also do Talosctl logs to see if there are logs. I spelled it wrong. Talosctl logs. So you can see any logs. You can also specify the cluster you want, the context, and the rest. Thank you for watching. See you another time. Stay blessed. Bye. And one more thing before we go is that if I go back and I check here, right, you can see the process. So in case there are containers running, you can see whatever that is happening there, right? You can see there. You can monitor from here also, or the processes. See you.